This is Saskia, and this is Note to Self, your weekly dose of everything that's simply too long to text. Consider this your personal invitation into my inner circle, where I share my thoughts, feelings, and quiet reflections that usually live inside my Notes app. Thanks for joining me. Alrighty. Sunny, come here. I have a special guest with us today. His name, Sunny, is Sunny. He's trying to run away from me. This is Sunny. He's my cousin's dog. Say hello, Sunshine. Hi. No, that's not for you. He wants to speak on the mic, apparently. But this is Sunny. Look at the camera, Sunshine. He's a bit shy, looking away, huh? Because apparently all I ever do is look after dogs. And I don't have one of my own. But I have this little cutie who I love. It's actually, Sunny, there we go, buddy. Oh, he's going to sit right next to me. How cute. So it's actually such a sad story. My cousin adopted him. He was a foster fail. So he was fostering him and they just fell in love with him. So that's the happy part because it's been so cool to see him just become such a little doggy. He was a breeder dog and he was kept in a cage for like 5 years. So he had never really had like human touch or cuddles and like he didn't really know how to be a real dog. And it's been so beautiful to just see him so like become a dog over the last, 2 years. And this time looking after him, I've like really noticed it. He like loves to go on walks and he was so happy and he truly has the happiest smile on his face all the time. And his little teeth. But it's been very, very sweet to see him come more into his personality. But we're looking after him this week while my cousin's on his mini moon. And it's just after we had his wedding last week, which I was just in Miami for a week. So I took this little guy back with me and traveled with a dog, which was so fun. And I've never done that before. And I feel like it was like practice for Jeffrey and I as we eventually, hopefully soon, get a dog, which will be exciting. But yeah, we spent a week in Miami. It was so special. It was kind of like a mini family reunion. So I had, some of my family, immediate family from Australia was here, mom and dad. I got to see my dad and he's doing much better, which is great. And then one of my cousins from Australia came and then my cousins who are over here. So it was just so lovely. Like I don't think all of us had been together since we were really young and we were missing quite a few family members as well. But it was just so, so, so special and reconnected with so many of my cousin's friends who had known me since I was young and just so, so special. And weddings really are so wonderful for that, for bringing people together. And I always love seeing kind of the expression of couples through their wedding choices. And I'm super close with my cousin who got married and his now wife. We all live in NYC, so we spend a ton of time together. And, getting to know her community was so special. And I keep saying special. This is the word of the day, apparently. But yeah, I think having been to a few weddings now, like I said, I love when couples really use it as a way to express who they are as a couple. And I've been reading a lot about that weddings are becoming less traditional and it's more of a celebration of who they are. So there were some things that I wanted to call out of stuff that I loved that they did that I hadn't either have started to see at weddings or I hadn't seen at a wedding before. So I'll call out a few of my favorite things. The first was a Mayflower pole, which I have never seen at a wedding, and I loved it. I assume I think her family, one side is Swiss and the other side is Venezuelan, so I'd say it's probably more of a European tradition. And all the women who do not have a ring on their left hand were invited to join the Mayflower pole. And there were long ribbons tied to her bouquet. And the bride held the bouquet above her head while the women each grabbed one of these long ribbons and we kind of danced around her. And then my cousin, the groom, slowly cut each ribbon. As your ribbon was cut, you bowed out. And it's kind of like the last woman standing received the bouquet. It was just so pretty. I loved it so much more than the traditional throwing of the bouquet. And it was really fun. If I got married, I seriously really want to do that. And then the next thing, which was really fun, was the Horka Loca. dude, get ready for that to have been pronounced totally wrong. But it's a Venezuelan tradition. It means the crazy hour. And it's this high energy surprise celebration that usually is held near the end of the wedding. And it features like really fast paced music, and it had a live band, and all the band were in costumes, and they were dancers and stilt walkers and all these props that they bring out that you throw on, like masks and hats and silly wigs and stuff, and it's meant to like reinvigorate the guests. And that was one of my favorite parts of the wedding because everyone was on the dance floor, all the kids, and it was just such a fun celebration. And I think it went for like 20 minutes, and it didn't feel too long at all. They brought out what is that thing called that we used to always do as kids where you have the pole and you have to go under it? Why am I blanking on what this is called? For the life of me, limbo. There we go. The limbo. Oh my God. I used to be obsessed with limbo when I was a kid. I was pretty good at it. And I was like, I'm going to be the first one under this limbo stick. Went under, swear to God, pulled my back out. It was fine like 2 minutes later. But I went in just immediately and was like, wow, this is lower than it looked when I went under. And then was like, I just have to go. Like, there's nothing I can do. So I just went back and was like, oh my God, my back. It is so much harder as a 34-year-old woman. Way, way harder. Oh my God, I'm 34. I just realized. I was about to say 33, and then I realized I'm 34. Wild. Anyways, that was one of my fave parts of the night. And I always love when people bring traditions from their heritage and things that I necessarily wouldn't know. So it was definitely really cool to see both of those. The other part I loved was they did a really long, skinny cake. And I've seen quite a few couples starting to do this where you put the candles down the middle and then they blow the candles out from each side and then meet in the middle and kiss. And I always think it's so cute. It's such a cute video and photo moment. And what was really beautiful is my sister and aunt decorated the cake. They did all the flowers on the cake. And my sister works as a prop stylist and set designer, and my aunt is a chef. So they just killed it. And it was so beautiful to have, family members being able to contribute based on their skills as well. It saves a ton of money because that would have cost thousands of dollars to do. And they did the most beautiful job. My sister, we went to the flower market and sourced all the flowers, and the way they decorated it was just stunning. I'll make sure to pop a photo of the cake in the podcast. But I like that kind of led to my next thing that I love that is a thing that I've seen weddings do is this family support where it's offering skills or help with different elements of the wedding beyond just, paying for things or just being there, whether your parents pay for things or not, but just being able to offer based on skills. And I think that that's a really lovely thing to do, whether you have an officiant that's a friend or a family member. There's so many ways to incorporate the people you love into the experience. And I also think that's such a nice way to approach weddings. And then two final things that I loved was they had a mariachi band, which made perfect sense. It's Miami, lol, capital of Latin America. And they played Bad Bunny, and the band had learnt Bad Bunny. So it's like a Bad Bunny mashup. And they came out as the ceremony ended and everyone was walking into the reception. It was just a fun moment. And I love hearing modern music played in more traditional ways, whether it's a mariachi band or in Bridgerton when they had the classical music playing like a Taylor Swift song. Such a vibe. And my all-time favorite moment was they played Beto's Horns by Fred again. And I think it was the moment after the Mayflower Ball, and they were kind of like, my cousin and his bride were getting the dance floor started. And that was the song they started to kick things off with. And they love to dance. And we always go to live music together. We go to lots of raves. We love DJs and house music. And it just felt so on brand for them, and another like beautiful representation of things they love and stuff that they love to do together, which is dance together. And it was just so fun. And I love when DJs play almost more like a DJ set at weddings that is mixed with, all different types of music. But I like when it's considered more of a set than just, playing a bunch of songs you hear all the time. So those were some of my takeaways. And the venue was absolutely stunning. It was this old Spanish monastery. It felt so European, but it was surrounded by these very tropical, Miami gardens. It really was such a special evening and probably one of my favorite weddings I've been to. So props to them, and makes me excited to think about weddings in the future. And the wedding also fell on the same weekend as International Women's Day, which was on Sunday. This is Sunday, March 8th, so that just passed. And it's the same, weekend as International Women's Month, which is March. So that kind of led me to my topic today based on some takeaways I had from the wedding as well, which is really about the importance of female communities. So I think throughout the weekend over the wedding, I thought a lot about the powerful women in my life. And, from my friends to my family to ancestors that are no longer with us, I feel like I've constantly been surrounded by strong women. And my family is truly a matriarchy. From my immediate family to my broader family, it's always been described to that. That is how I was raised, was in a matriarchal family. The women were always kind of the leaders of our family. So it all felt very kismet that the wedding fell over International Women's Day, as my family, my cousin, married into also another family that has a very strong matriarchy. And what was really beautiful is during the welcome party, my aunt, my mother's sister, she spoke and she welcomed my cousin's wife into our family and our matriarchy. And she listed the women from our family who were present. The majority of those who attended were actually the female members of our family. And my aunt acknowledged our strong female lineage from the bride's family and then from our own, saying that was something she always connected with the bride over, was her strong matriarchal lineage and how important that was to her. And then both of these kind of families coming together. And at the end of the speech, she listed all the women who were there, my mother, my sister, me, my other female cousins from her husband's side as well who were there. And we all went up at the end and surrounded the bride and gave her a really big hug, welcoming her to our family of women, and at least the female side. My cousin, his brother was there too, and he's such a sweetheart, and came up and was like, I want to be a part of the girls. He's like, I just love all the women in our family. And it's just really beautiful that, even the men of our family feel so connected to that too. So this moment was super special, for me, just being around family. But what was really interesting was it affected a lot of the women who attended this wedding. We all had multiple women coming up to us and sharing how special that moment was for them, and seeing this strong group throughout generations leading the way and the close connection we all have with one another. And it really made me realize how unique my family bond really is, and how important having a strong female community is, whether it's your family or your friends or whoever. But this connection resonated with so many women at the wedding, and I thought it was important to discuss today because of the fact that it seemed to resonate with a lot of people, and I wonder if this topic will resonate with more of my listeners. So I kind of wanted to get started by looking back and talking about female communities as a whole. And I did a little, brief, a little research. I'm not going super deep into it, but just historically, women have always gathered in communities. We gathered in villages, kitchens, markets, sewing circles, book clubs, salons. But these weren't just friendships or family. They were often multi-generational communities of women, and they gathered with, mothers, daughters, friends, grandmothers, aunts, neighbors, friends, and it was a survival tool. So these groups provided childcare, emotional support, shared labor, and women raised their children together. There was this shared knowledge about life, and they supported one another through hardship. And many of these spaces have disappeared as society has become more individualistic and career-focused. And I feel like women automatically gained this support network that we have to kind of find ourselves. And we've lost that because historically it was something that was immediately there, and now we have to work really hard to find these communities and nurture them. And as I started to look at this on a larger scope and a wider lens, I thought about just women generally and the idea that women are creators. And at our core, we create. And that doesn't just mean life. Like, we don't just create babies. That is not what we just do, guys. It goes beyond that. And I think it's like pure creation. We're creating everything to emotional environments, communities, traditions, and support systems. And I think so much of that is inherently created by women. And I often feel like we're kind of the architects of the emotional world around us. And I guess that kind of plays into that yin yang energy as well. And yin being more of the female energy. And I think throughout history, we have created these communities to support one another. But unfortunately, these communities are harder to maintain today, and they aren't as much as a given as they were in the past, for positive reasons as well, because I think it's fantastic that we can chase our careers and travel and do all these things that we weren't able to do in the past. The world has opened up to us in such a beautiful way, and I would never want that taken away. But it's more, the episode is today focusing on the importance of female communities, but I wanted to give that historical context. And I think some of the reasons why these communities are harder to maintain today is this like modern isolation of women. I think today, and it's not just women, but I'm talking about women right now. But today, I think we often feel more isolated despite being connected. You know, we're moving cities for our careers away from family and friends. We're living far from our families. We're remote working. We're spending more time on social media than making real connections. And sometimes we're prioritizing dating culture and romantic relationships over friendship. And I'm not saying that any of this is bad per se. A lot of these are great things that we're able to do now, but it's just that these have often taken forefront over some of our community building, especially with women. And I think for women, we need that. And I mean, I think one other element that I really wanted to dive into when you're talking about kind of these barriers almost is this cultural trope of women being bitchy and too intense. And it pushes sometimes women to adopt this cool girl persona that distances themselves from female spaces. This idea that like, oh, I'm not really a girl's girl. That has always irked me to its very core. And I'm so sick of hearing that women are bitchy or too emotional because it's just blatantly untrue. And I feel like this trope was just another tool for the patriarchy, if we really want to go into it that way. But it is particularly dangerous because it forces women to compete with each other, and it discourages this like deep emotional connection in favor of being like easygoing or low maintenance, both of which are seen as these valuable traits in a woman by societal standards. And I think if you've ever really struggled to maintain female friendships or you felt distance from your female community, it might be something worth examining. Because if you've told yourself that women are catty or that you can't connect with other women because they're too emotional, I think it's worth reflecting. Why do I feel this way? Is it because I've internalized society's idea of what an acceptable woman should look like? I think whenever there are these barriers we face in life, it's a moment for reflection on what it's going to say about yourself. And it's possible that sometimes we feel this distance from other women because this is how we've been taught to perceive them rather than how you truly, really feel. And it's not judgment in the slightest, because I've known people who struggled to make female connections. And I just think it's the women I've known that have struggled with that. They've looked at it and they've also realized that like there's someone that generally they need to put more effort into their relationships or whatnot. But I just always feel like everything when there's a barrier is a moment for reflection and growth and asking yourself why, what do I need to learn from this? But I feel like those are all these barriers that make these communities sometimes harder for certain people to hold on to. And then I guess I go into, but why does it matter? Why do our female connections, why do they matter as much as our romantic relationships? I think society often places romantic relationships above all other relationships. But when you really think about it, female communities, both family and friendships, often hold us through some of the biggest moments in life. The women in my life, at least, they show up for breakups, career transitions, personal crisis, illness, eventually motherhood. I've shown up for my friends with their motherhood, grief, you name it, the happy moments, fun, travel, all of it. Love. It is the most beautiful. It's a relationship that just never goes away. And I'll never forget one of my girlfriends who said to me, our friendship is not dependent on the time we spend together, or like how often we communicate, but the quality that we're together. And I love that. And I feel like romantic relationships can come and go, but our female communities often provide continuity throughout our lives. And it really made me reflect on the Sex and the City episode, which is one of my all-time favorites because that whole show is about friendship, really. At the core of it, it's not about the guys they're dating, but it's about friendship. And there's this famous line from Charlotte where she says, maybe we could be each other's soulmates. And guys are just these fun, nice guys to have around. It's just the most beautiful line, and it is so true. And that has always held me because I was single for a very long time, and my whole community were the women I was in. And yes, I have my partner now, but that female community and that core has not gone anywhere. And I lean on them for so many other things as well. And I had this beautiful feeling when I was single because society's always telling you have to find a man, like your worth is finding a relationship. And I was like, I found my soulmates, and I felt so lucky for that. And I feel like this, this sentiment around, maybe we can be each other's soulmates, our friends, it applies to your sisters, your mothers, your cousins, and just all the women in your life. I think women in our communities are the ones that witness our lives. And they knew us before any of our relationships, before any of our careers, before any of our success or whatever it is in your life. They've known you through all the different versions of yourself. My sister remembers me as a child. My friend has remembered all the loser guys I dated. My cousin has been there through many of the phases of my life as we grew up 6 months apart as children. Our whole life we've experienced things together. And I think there's something incredibly stabilizing about knowing that there's these people in my life who've seen me through all these stages and know me in such different ways. And I feel like we need to start prioritizing our female friendships as much as we prioritize our relationship with our partner. And I guess that goes on to the fact that there's different roles for women in your community. And there's not a single woman a female friend or family member that's going to fulfill every need. I think female communities work because different women play different roles. Some examples of, females and friends in my life, women in my life. I have my grounding and spiritual friends. I've got my brutally honest friend. I have my dancing friend. I have my childhood friend, my adventurous friend, my friend that makes me laugh hysterically. I have my friends who love food and wine, and I have so many different connections of women who bring me different things. My family members, my mother who offers guidance, my sister who knows me better than anyone probably, my cousin who has always felt like a built-in best friend, I have a lot that I'm very close with. My aunts who act like second mothers, and my grandmother who always held me so spiritually, not only in this life, but now beyond as she has passed in her spiritual realm. And I feel like she will always be holding me. I feel her by me at all times. And I think when you step back and you realize female communities are like a network, not just one relationship, and that some can hold multiple roles, and that you have women in your life for different purposes, you just really start to realize how important this is. And even if you have one that can do it all, just someone, And I know not everyone's also super close with their families, and that's okay. But I'm just trying to reiterate the importance of women beyond just your friends, but also your family too. And you ultimately can't always expect one person to fulfill all those roles. So I think sometimes you're doing a disservice to that one person if you are expecting that. And maybe that is another area to look at, to maybe find other people in your life that you connect with, and going out and finding shared interests with other women that you connect with over that. And then I was thinking through how female communities evolve over time. So as we shift through life, friendships change. I spoke about this last week when I was talking about friendship breakups. You move cities, your careers shift, people get married or have children. Priorities ultimately evolve. Your values change, and that's totally okay. Your family relationships evolve too. Sometimes you become closer to certain relatives later in life, and sometimes others fade away. And just like friendships, they can deepen and others can fade. And I don't think all relationships are meant to last in the same form forever. And they can also go through seasons. And even with family, I've had moments where I've felt so connected to certain family members, and other moments where we drifted apart. And sometimes you lose commonality as well. I'm very different to one side of my family than I am to another. And it's totally okay. I think the point that I'm trying to drive home is that, any female community is important, and prioritizing what that looks like for you in that moment and who those people are in that moment, and constantly asking yourself, who are the people that bring me joy? Back to my ins and outs for 2026. Your time is like diamonds and treat it as such. So looking at who are these people in my life that are bringing me what I need in this moment and lifting me up and making me feel prioritized, and also giving back to them too, because it's a two-way street. You put into your community what you want to get back. And finally, not finally, actually, I don't know why I said finally. I'm not there yet. The next element is the element of giving back. So how do you protect and nurture these communities? Because they don't sustain themselves automatically like they did in the past. They require attention and intention. And I think ways that these relationships survive, at least in my experience, is intentional time together. My girlfriends and I are really good at organizing group activities, dinners, trips. We book shows that we want to go to together. And we really make sure we always are prioritizing time together. We have traditions. I see a lot of my friends from traveling. We prioritize trips. We show up. We go to things like, there's a group of us that now want to go to Burning Man again. And might be becoming a little mini tradition. And you have these moments. There's a DJ that plays here every summer. My best friend and I always go. It's kind of like our tradition. Although she's moving to Miami. Cry. So we're not going to be able to go this year. But we will find other traditions to do together. My cousin and I were actually reflecting on this, and what makes it easier being so far apart, she's one of my really close cousins, she lives in Australia, is that in the last 2 years, we've always known when we were going to see each other next. And we've kind of made an agreement that every time we say goodbye, we should know when we're going to see each other next, because it just makes it so much easier. And then you always have that dedicated time. And it also means that life isn't getting in the way, because so often life can get in the way and then you end up, not being able to meet up. I think also showing up in difficult moments when things happen, like illness or heartbreak, grief. I think women are always the ones that mobilize first. They cook meals, they organize support, they check in constantly. And I was feeling like the women in my life act as my emotional infrastructure in a way. And that is something that you can do for the people in your life to really build that relationship. And then on the other side of it, celebrating wins. You can celebrate birthdays, graduations, new jobs, new relationships, engagement, babies, weddings, all of the above. But one of my friends started this really great thing, and she calls it International Name Day. So it's like International Saskia Day, International whatever day. And it's a day that we've each picked. So it's our day. And it is something that isn't a birthday or some type of special event, but it was a day that was something that was meaningful to us. So for mine, it was the day that I moved back to New York for my second chapter. I felt this second chapter brought me so many beautiful things and was a totally different version of myself, and it's something I want to celebrate. For her, it was the day she quit a job that she hated. And I think it can really be anything, but it allows you to celebrate something that's important to you beyond these major wins. And every year, even if we just send each other a text, we have it in each other's calendars. Sometimes we'll do a dinner if we can, but it's a fun way to think about your friends in a different capacity beyond just these big moments. And then I also feel like a lot of what I've been reflecting with, especially with my parents generally, is listening to the stories of older women in our lives and older people in our lives generally. Many societies historically had the concept of elders guiding the community. I often felt that in my family. My grandmother really guided our family. She was the matriarch. And now it's, my great aunt, who is the eldest member of the family, and then it will pass to likely my mother. And I cannot emphasize how important it is to spend time with these people. If you have good relationships with them, ask questions. I'm not saying go spend time if you don't have a good relationship or there's, history, but if they're people that you really love and respect, calling them, visiting relatives, asking your grandmother about her life, because one day those stories are going to disappear if we don't ask about them. So often I reflect on my grandmother and how I wish I had spent more time talking to her about her spiritual life. I wasn't as spiritual when she was alive, and I think it's something that I regret not having asked her more about. And I know she's around me. I feel that, but that's something I've always regretted. And there's even like these books now that you can ask your family members to keep to fill out to keep their stories alive. It's different questions they can record about their lives. I've even thought if your parents or older family members are not writers, you could even ask them the questions and record it as like a podcast. Or I have other friends that they send videos back and forth every week. So they have a series of videos from her mom. So she'll always have these videos from her mom sending her every week. So there's all these just beautiful ways you can immortalize their stories. That's the word I was looking for. Or memorialize your history. There we go. Whatever, it both works. And now I'm getting to my conclusion. So really, as I think back on this, and I think back to that moment at the wedding when all the women in my family stood around the bride and we welcomed her into our matriarchy, I realized how rare and powerful something like that is. And it wasn't just symbolic. It was generations of women standing together. The mothers, the daughters, the cousins, sisters, aunts, the ancestors who were with us. And in that moment, I could really feel the strength of my community. And I think that is what people resonated with. Women looked at that and said to me, they wished they had that, or they want to build that for their daughters, or they want to continue that. They want to reach out to their family members more, or their friends. And I just was so proud of my family in that moment to have that connection. And we are not perfect. We have gone through stuff. We've had fights or we've not spoken to each other for years, but we have come back together. And the beauty is that strength and that underlying relationship has always been there. And it's just so lovely to be a part of that. And I'm just so grateful for it. And I feel like, female communities aren't just friendships. They're the women who hold our lives together. They're the ones who raised us, birthed us. They grew up beside us. The ones who have come into our lives in many moments throughout our life. And they've maybe been there for a short period or they've stayed longer. Beyond friendships, there are family, your actual family and the family you've created, the family you choose. They witness our lives. They hold us through breakups, career shifts, grief, joy, and all of the transitions. And I think the truth is that these communities, they don't sustain themselves automatically. They require attention and intention. So calling your mother, asking your grandmother about her life, planning that girls' trip that you always want to do. All you need is one person to organize it, and then everyone will jump on board. That is at least my experience with my friendship group. So shout out to my girlfriend who always organizes shit for us. Love you. Show up for the birthday parties and the hard moments and the random Tuesdays that's happening right now where my girls are getting drinks and I'm here doing this. So you better enjoy the podcast, guys. But when you step back and really look at it, so much of our life is carried on the strength of these relationships and these women. So I think the question we should all ask ourselves is, who are the women in your life that have really held you up, and how often do you tell them how important they are to you? So really, this episode is dedicated to all the women in my life, my cousins, my mother, my aunt, my grandmother, my sisters, my friends, my best friends, all the women who I interact with, ones that are new friends, old friends, whoever you are. I value you in ways that I can't even verbalize, even though I just verbalized it the last whole episode. You are the stars of my bloody life, and I just think everyone should really focus on building communities like this. And if you ever need advice on it, I have always had pretty good female friends. I am really proud of that. I am a self-proclaimed girl's girl, so always here to help. And I think also make sure to give everyone a chance too, because sometimes friends are like onions and you got to peel them back a little bit to get to the underlayers. And I find that sometimes we just, we forget that. So just like a relationship, it takes time and you have to build it. Well, thanks for being with me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Or gals. Ugh, I cannot be saying guys on the time. But I appreciate you all, and I will see you next week for No More Note to Self. Bye.